Hello, thanks for being in a new video. This time I have the review of the Galaxy M35 5G. Let's get started. This is a mid-range device, and as it is part of the Galaxy M series, we will find an even tighter price. In fact, at its launch in Mexico, it was priced at 5,499 pesos. That is approximately $310. However, it has already dropped in price, and at the time of recording this video, officially its price is 4,499. That's approximately $255. So it honestly strikes me as one of the most attractive devices out there for the fact that it's a Galaxy, and generally Galaxies have good options. So how about you join me to see what it has to offer against its main competitors, since in this segment there are many devices. Although consider that on Amazon or Mercado Libre you can still find it even cheaper, which would make it even more attractive. Let's start by describing its design, since on the front, like many, Galaxy is not going to be attractive. It has quite thick bezels that make the device look a bit outdated, even though it doesn't have a notch drop but a round cutout to place the camera. It definitely looks like an old device and doesn't look that modern. In addition, it does not integrate any level of Gorilla Glass protection, so on the front we definitely find one of its weakest points. It has neither good aesthetics nor a remarkable resistance. On the right side, we are going to find the volume buttons along with the power button, which at the same time is a fingerprint reader that we will talk about later. At the top is placed only a microphone, while on the left side is placed the tray where you can place two SIM cards, or also a SIM card and a microSD card, since one of the trays is dual, although you know also that this can vary. It may be that in some countries the second tray is blocked, so you have to consult that information specifically in the place where you are going to buy it. On the bottom we will find a microphone, USB-C port, and the speaker with a single wide perforation, although curiously it does not come with headphone jack, and that I think may be one of its weakest points. Obviously, the whole frame will be made of plastic, and in this case it comes with a weight of 9.1 millimeters, so it could not be categorized as a very thin device. In fact, it is not very light either, as it weighs 222 grams, and considering that we are not really talking about a high-end device that incorporates a lot of hardware options, it is definitely a device that could be considered heavy. The back cover will come available in 3 colors. I have the light blue option, but it is also available in dark blue and gray. In this case, it comes with a grid-like pattern that, depending on the angle of the light, is going to look more or less. So it comes with a nice design to look at. The cameras also come with a decoration ring in this same color, which gives it an attractive touch. Obviously, it's going to be a plastic cover, and in this case, we don't find any level of water or dust resistance, so you have to watch out for those kinds of accidents. The screen is 6.6 inches in its diagonal. Fortunately, we are talking about a Super AMOLED panel, and I say this because in the price range is not something so usual. There are other devices that bet on IPS screens, so in this case I will find very saturated colors, very good viewing angles. From any side you see the screen will look good. The resolution is full HD+, and also has a refresh rate of 120 Hz. So, all in all, it's a device that has an excellent display. It actually supports HDR content. Its peak brightness is 1000 nits. It's not exaggeratedly high, but when you're watching HDR content, you can have this feeling of much more realism, because some areas of the screen will have this ability to raise its brightness to much higher levels. So, in short, it's a very good display. In sunlight, you're going to have good readability. Obviously, it's not as impressive as in the high end, but it's a screen that gets to stand up well. Having this resolution also allows you to have crisp text even when the fonts are small, so it is a screen that in all aspects complies in a very good way, considering that we are talking about a lower mid-range device. And while the high brightness level is good, the minimum brightness level sometimes in this range can fall a little short, but in this case it is a good minimum brightness that even comes well complemented with the accessibility option of extra dimmed on the screen, with which you could further lower the brightness and have a much more comfortable viewing. And if you combine it with the Bixby routines so that it is automatically enabled, it is the perfect combo to have a very good screen experience, both in bright areas and at night, when you no longer want the screen to hurt you much. Through software, it has 2 color calibration options. We find the vivid setting and the natural setting, depending on whether or not you like saturated colors. You can also customize the white balance if you want a screen a little cooler or a little warmer, although it does not have an automatic adjustment of this section. And within the advanced settings, you can customize specifically in the RGB parameters how you want the display to look, so I think it's fine in each of those aspects. The sound is another aspect where this device gets to stand out in a very good way, because not only does it have stereo sound, which in itself is already a very positive point in its favor, but it also has very good power and very good quality. So it is a sound that can fill a large space very well. In addition, it has a relatively good presence of bass frequencies considering its price. So it is a very good quality sound. Let's listen to a small test, although remember that it is not the same to listen to it live. And again, it's complemented nicely through software, where we find Dolby Atmos for gaming, and access to a 9-band equalizer that you can customize specifically, without the need for headphones attached. So you can customize your sound experience very well. So far, in the sound section, we found only positive things, but when talking about headphones is where we start to find something negative, because it has no headphone jack, so you will necessarily use wireless headphones. Or you could also use headphones through the USB-C port. The good news is that if you are going to opt for wireless headphones, it does support the aptX codec and also the LDSC codec, so you can have a good wireless sound resolution. The device also through software has Adapt Sound, which will allow you to adapt the sound specifically to how you perceive each of the frequencies. And it also has the independent application sound function, which remember allows you to send the sound of certain applications to a Bluetooth speaker, while the sound of other applications will remain playing on your cell phone. That allows you, for example, at a party while you're playing music on your speaker, to listen to WhatsApp audios directly on your cell phone, or to start watching videos without interrupting the sound that you're sending to the speaker. So it's a very useful feature that is not present on many devices. Regarding the microphones, we will find two, one on the top and one on the bottom, to capture stereo sound when you are recording some video. Next, we will listen to a test of these microphones recording my voice. Esta es una prueba de los micrófonos del Galaxy M35 5G grabada en este momento. Obviously, voices in an optimal environment will pick them up very well. Next, we'll see how it performs in a much noisier environment with a video clip recorded using this device in a very loud environment. As you can see, even in very loud environments, the device performs well with its microphones adjusting the gain correctly. So I really think it is a very good tool. The front camera is 13 megapixels with f2.2 aperture and fixed focus, just like other Galaxy. We're going to be able to have the 2-tap gesture on the power button to enter the camera, and this gesture can react even if you're inside some app or if you have the phone locked. So it's very fast. And also with this same gesture, you can rotate to the front camera, and on the front camera we have two angles. The more open angle takes advantage of the full resolution. The tighter angle does a crop, so the picture is 9 megapixels. The device is going to have a less than snappy response to multiple shutter presses, so it's difficult to capture quick photos. If you hold down the shutter, you start recording a short video that you can continue without the need to stop your finger if you swipe up. Then notice that if you slide this shutter down, we will be able to access a burst, so you can get to take quick pictures, but necessarily through the burst mode. Notice that it has the motion picture feature, so it captures a little video before you take the picture. And we will also find another button where we can enable the facial beauty options, which has 4 different parameters, so you can modify your face, or you can select any of the color filters that, by the way, if you can preview in real time. And remember that to capture photos in a comfortable way, Samsung has this trigger through the palm of your hand. You can also take pictures with voice commands and activate a floating button, so you can place it where it's most comfortable for you and also take pictures. This camera definitely captures some extremely detailed pictures. I really like the result. In this price range, you will be hard-pressed to find a front-facing camera this good. I've actually tried many other devices, and at this price point, they take very simple front camera pictures, although being fixed focus, you do need to be at an optimal distance. If you stretch your arm out too far, for example, notice how you lose a lot of detail because you are no longer in focus. And obviously, if you are too close to the camera, you will also notice that you will not be able to get a good level of detail. And obviously, for group shots, since the camera is not wide enough to capture everyone at the same distance, the people that are farther away are going to come out with a lot less detail and more out of focus, and the people that are closer to the camera will have a little bit more detail. But now, yes, the colors are captured well. Indoors, you will also notice that there is a lot more noise present in the scene, although it still maintains good color saturation, but it definitely seems that you do need optimal lighting to get a good result. In backlight, notice how the preview doesn't look well optimized as the areas appear completely burnt out, but notice how the result is much better balanced in terms of highlights and shadows, although the colors are not as accurate. But speaking specifically of backlighting, it handles it just fine. This would be another backlit scene, and notice how it does manage to keep the textures of the clouds and even at night. If you still have a close light source, the result is positive. It doesn't have as much noise as we would expect after looking at the interior shots, so the result is still nice and even in backlit conditions at night. Note that the result is going to be acceptable, but here you're already starting to notice that this is a lower mid-range device. So however, notice how nice the portraits come out. If you have a lot of lights in the back, you could achieve a very nice bokeh effect. In this case, there weren't that many lights, but still the result, as I tell you, is very nice, in fact free of noise and with good colors. In the daytime, portraits will be just as nice in terms of the blur applied to the background, but note that it is not able to detect objects in the foreground as we see in other Galaxy of higher ranges. For the rear photographic system, we will first find the 16mm ultra-wide camera with an 8-megapixel sensor, has f-aperture 2.2 and fixed focus, then the 27mm main camera with a 50-megapixel sensor, f-aperture 1.8, autofocus and optical stabilization, and finally a 2-megapixel macro camera with f2.4 aperture. This will obviously be the simplest. As always, you will have a little delay in the preview, and when you try to capture the exact moment, notice that you also have a little delay, so it's not that easy. Remember that if you slide down the shutter, you can also start a burst of up to 30 pictures, and when you capture the burst, you also have a little delay, but it actually does help you capture the exact moment. If you tap anywhere on the screen, you can adjust the exposure and focus. And in the upper right corner, we are also going to be able to load some color filters, modifying their intensity, and of course also the beauty facial effects. Remember that it also has Pro mode available, where the ISO setting will be available, which can go up to 3200. You can also modify the shutter speed, which can go up to 10 seconds, also compensation, focus, white balance. And in this part, you can still enable more settings like contrast, highlights, shadows, saturation, and tint. So you have a lot of parameters to modify your picture, but you can't take pictures in RAW. And for the smart capture, note that if it is able to automatically detect the documents to make a crop of these sheets, but it will only be a cropped photograph, that is, it does not bring some color optimizer, nor can you add more pages to it. And fortunately, it can also scan QR codes directly from the main interface in a very fast way. This device allows us to capture photos in a high-resolution format with 50 megapixels, and it does take advantage of all the information from the sensor. I find that the picture does look very detailed for those moments where you want a picture that you might want to print in large format. In motion scenarios, the ultra-wide camera I think does a good job, as does the main camera. Although interestingly, the main camera seems to have had a bit more trouble capturing well-defined movements. In fact, in this scenario, we also noticed that the main camera had a slightly more pink-tinged color rendition, which I didn't find as pleasing. In this scenario, I think the color rendering of the ultra-wide camera was more accurate. But let's evaluate other outdoor shots so you can see how the ultra-wide camera has considerably high quality considering the price of the device. Notice that although there are some distortions and small blurs at the edges, they are not really as noticeable as we have seen in some other higher priced devices. So it's a good camera. Yes, there is chromatic aberration, especially very noticeable in these areas. But as I tell you, considering its price point, I think it's very good. In this scenario, the main camera I think had a much better color rendition. Also notice that the main camera is obviously going to have less distortions in the edges, although in this case if you get to perceive some, so it confirms to us that it's not a high-end camera, but I think it holds up well for colors and detail. In this case, you are looking at a photo with 2x zoom since the camera shows us that shortcut in the main interface. However, note that it does not maintain optical quality, it is simply a simple shortcut. The maximum zoom of this device is 10x, but it doesn't seem to take good advantage of the 50 megapixel sensor. In this aspect, we definitely did expect better. Indoors, the ultra-wide camera notes that it has a strong presence of noise and there is little definition, so it is not so recommended to take pictures with this ultra-wide camera in low-light scenarios. The main camera does a better job, although you still manage to perceive a bit of graininess, but it obviously improves definition, as well as color capture, but it's still a picture that doesn't look as clean as we'd like. In backlit scenarios, note that the preview looks very poorly optimized, burning absolutely all the background. With the main camera, it manages to balance the highlight area well, although the shadow area still remains a bit dark, but it was a cloudy day and the backlight was therefore quite aggressive. So I consider that the device does a good job. The ultra-wide camera manages to perform very similarly. So I honestly think Samsung does a good job with these cameras, although in backlit scenarios, the chromatic aberration could reveal itself in a much more intense way. At night, the ultra-wide camera is going to have a good capture, obviously if you have some light source present, and it's going to use an automatic night mode. As you notice that turning on night mode there really doesn't seem to be much difference. The main camera performs very similarly. Fortunately, it maintains color saturation well, and in this case with night mode it does seem to have a little difference, giving a cleaner result, controlling noise better and raising color saturation slightly. And in much darker scenarios where there is no light source, see how the preview looks. Obviously, the ultra-wide camera has few light gathering capabilities in these scenarios, but the main camera notes how it does a remarkable job considering there was no nearby light source. For macro captures, the ideal is to use the main camera. Notice how nice the result looks. And if we apply a little digital zoom, the result can look even better, even though the camera doesn't allow us to get that close to these tiny objects. But note that the macro camera is not able to give us a much better result than what the main camera gives us, since it offers a very basic resolution and the colors are also less accurate. Here you have other examples of how the main camera achieves a very attractive photograph in this type of scenario. And this is what the macro camera would give us. As you can see, it loses a lot of details due to its low resolution. The device also allows us to capture panoramic photos using the ultra-wide camera, so you can get super wide results with lots of information. And this is a strong point because most devices do not allow you to take panoramic photos with this camera. And finally, regarding portrait shots, note that in this case it is able to keep the objects in the foreground in focus. The bokeh effect applied in the background is nice. And with regard to detection in the gaps, he notes that it has some shortcomings, but this is normal in the mid-range. There is not much to reproach it. Really, the photo quality is good, although without the portrait mode, I think it was a little more accurate in the colors. For video recording, the good news is that it does support 4K quality at 30 frames per second. This on both the main rear camera and the front camera. So you have very good support in terms of resolution. Obviously, the ultra-wide camera is going to have to drop down in resolution to full HD, but for the price range, it is excellent news that it supports 4K recording. Note that there is also a button to activate a super stable mode, and also in the top right corner, there is a button to activate filters when recording video, although obviously these filters are only supported if you are recording video in full HD. We will also find the automatic framing button that can keep you centered even if you are moving. And note that at the moment of starting the video recording, we have a button to take pictures, another button to pause or resume our recording, also a button to rotate to the front camera, something that very few devices allow. Even more expensive devices do not integrate this option. That's why we have to highlight it present in this device. In addition, we will find quick shortcuts to move between zoom, and of course we can also slide to move quickly, although the switch between the ultra-wide camera and the main camera, as you realize, is abrupt and has no intermediate points. Also, if you're using the ultra-wide camera, you can't turn on the flashlight, which I find very curious. But if you're with the main camera, you can turn this option on to try to brighten your scene more. In fact, another thing that I find very curious is that it does have a professional video mode, so you could have your recording with manual parameters. Even while you're recording, you can modify the ISO, shutter speed, compensation, focus as well. So it can give you very nice looking videos, and you can also modify the white balance to set it fixed. So it has very good parameters for advanced recording considering its price. The video quality seems very good to me, especially because of the resolution, because if you like to record in 4K, this device gives you very good capabilities. The level of detail is high, of course, although limited to 30 frames per second, but it is enough for a good amount of users. Colors are fine, it maintains good focus stability and a good white balance. With the ultra-wide camera, you can't shoot in 4K, so you're a bit more limited, and because it's not such an advanced lens, you're also going to notice a bit of chromatic aberration, some edge blur, but nothing really serious. However, indoors you will notice that the ultra-wide camera loses a lot of quality as it is not able to reduce noise in a good way. You will notice a lot of grain and poor definition in scenes where there is not much light. The main camera performs a little better. It should be remembered that this was recorded on a cloudy day, so the light was a bit lower than usual. It maintains good color saturation. In fact, at times I find the saturation to be a bit overdone, but either way it doesn't seem to be able to have as much definition as we saw outdoors. In backlit conditions, the truth is that the main camera has surprised me, balancing lights and shadows well, although the focus comes to have a little more complications. But speaking specifically about light and shadow balance, the job it does is very good considering its price. At night, we again notice something like what we saw indoors, i.e. saturation can become a little too high, although as I say, if you have a light source nearby, I think the result will be nice. In darker areas, you will perceive a little more noise, but in general, it is a camera that behaves well. I don't see anything we can criticize it too much for its price range. The ultra-wide camera will obviously have less definition, although if there is a good light source nearby, it can obviously help, but in the darker parts, it will suffer a bit more. Stabilization with the main camera, even when recording in 4K, is positive, and that's obviously going to be a highlight. If you're walking, you can have a scene that is well stabilized in its movements. If you are running, it can also be something remarkable considering its price and also considering that you are recording in 4K. Still, it integrates a super stable mode that will use the ultra-wide camera. So if you use the super stable mode, you won't have the 4K resolution. The result is a little bit strange because it doesn't seem to go at a very high bit rate, so the movements look a little bit strange in the details of the trees, for example, but specifically in the balance of all the movement, it does do a good job. So apak santai, the device also allows us to take a quick camera capture with a good quality. It is well stabilized and can go from 5x, which is useful for recording movements of people, and can go up to 60x, with which you can more or less record a landscape. It all depends on the speed of the landscape. In this case, the clouds were moving fast enough, but there are other scenarios where 60x is not enough to record such detailed landscapes. Although the fast camera can't be in 4K, I think that would be a good improvement. And with respect to the slow motion, please note that it's only in HD, so it's not that detailed a video, but considering its price, I think it's a good result that we are able to visualize because it goes at 240 frames per second. So the result is very nice, and it also has a super slow motion mode, although again in HD, which goes up to 480 frames per second. Obviously this is only a snippet of time, but it can be useful for creative scenes. The focus of this camera, we had already seen that it remains steady when the scene is stable. However, if there are moving and fast moving objects, I find that the focus also remains stable, although it takes a bit longer than usual to respond. However, for the price, I wouldn't get pickier. I consider that the device does perform well in adjusting the focus. And with respect to the zoom in video recording, note that the maximum it manages to reach is 10x, and honestly it does not seem to be a very good quality. I think it would be best to limit it to 5x or 4x since 10x looks exaggeratedly forced and with low quality. I really like the front-facing camera on this device for video recording. The simple fact that it supports 4K video gives you a very big advantage over any other competitor. It has a very good level of detail when recording, plus it does have stabilization, something that few devices can boast in the front camera with this resolution. Where it is obviously a bit lacking is in the dynamic range, since if you are recording against the light, the illuminated area will come out a bit burned, something that is normal in this type of device. We have even seen this same behavior in high-end devices, so we cannot reproach something in this regard. Remember also that it has fixed focus, so things you bring close to the camera are not going to focus. That's also normal for such an inexpensive device. Mas, diudambyo as ay down the indoors, you will notice that there is much more noise present. In this case, it was a cloudy day, so there was even less light than normal. The best thing to do when shooting with this camera is to have good lighting, otherwise there will be a lot more noise. Fortunately though, the colors retain a good level of saturation. At night, it will be exactly the same. In darker areas, you will perceive a little more noise, but fortunately, it still maintains a good level of detail. The ideal is to be close to a direct light source to get a better result. If you are backlit, the most illuminated area will come out a little burned, but I insist that it manages to pick up a good illumination on your face. Although to achieve that, there's still a little bit of noise present. And obviously, if you go to the darker areas, it's going to be a little more complicated, but it's remarkable the amount of light that manages to enter this camera. So, it's one of the best you'll find in this range, but it also includes a fast camera mode with stabilization, although this video is in full HD and not in 4K, so this would be one of the few things we could suggest to improve. If the camera in automatic mode does support 4K, it would be nice that in fast camera mode as well, and as you can see, it does not include a dual recording mode, so hopefully in the future this will be integrated in this series as well. In the software section, definitely that Samsung does not disappoint. It comes with Android 14 and One UI 6.1, so it's the latest in operating system. And in fact, it has 4 years of guaranteed software updates with 5 years of security patches. To give you an idea, this update policy is what other manufacturers offer on their high-end devices. So considering that this is a lower mid-range device, Samsung definitely does an excellent job at the software level. The device incorporates the Edge panel feature, which is this little sidebar where you can have quick access to some apps or also contacts, screen clipping tools, and you can even add many more panels through the Galaxy Store. So it's a pretty useful tool that is present on this device, and you're not going to find it on other non-Galaxy devices. We will also find a theme center where you can download other backgrounds, other always-on skins, other icons and the like. But speaking specifically of the always-on feature, remember that it allows you, while your device is locked, continue to display a specific cover. In this case, directly in the always-on display settings, there are few options, but in the Themes app is where you can download more always-on skins to have a little more extreme customization. Interestingly, Samsung has decided to also integrate Bixby on this device, which was the voice assistant that Samsung reserved only for the high-end. So through voice commands, you could manage things on the system. Bixby is very good in that sense. You can set timers, calendar events, activate Do Not Disturb mode, modify the brightness of the screen or how long you want it to stay on, and many other parameters of the cell phone. On the other hand, if you want to query information with Bixby, it's a little less advanced in that regard, but I insist to control things on your device. It is a voice assistant that is very useful. Also, you can enable it by holding down the power button so you can quickly launch some command. Remember that in the Samsung Labs experimental features, you can also force all apps to run in a floating window mode, including Instagram, YouTube, and any other app you want. This is something you'll only find on Galaxy devices, so it's a plus. And these floating windows, remember, you can move them around, resize them, even change the aspect ratio, so you can have an application that's a little bit more square or a little bit more rectangular. You can minimize them as well, and you can open many applications at the same time. So it really is a great productivity tool. If you combine it with the split screen option, you can have lots and lots of apps. Remember that it also integrates some other gestures like turning the phone face down so it's on silent and things like that, and the one-handed mode fortunately shrinks the screen not only on the vertical axis but also on the horizontal axis. So everything is very much at your fingertips in that mode. It also has a video call effects option compatible with WhatsApp, Google Meet, and possibly other apps. Through this feature, you can, for example, change your background as happens in computer video calls. So you can replace it with a solid color or with some image from your gallery or simply blur it. And it also includes an automatic framing option. In case you want to be moving, the camera is going to center you immediately. So these are options that are usually seen on computers, but Samsung has brought it to the cell phone as well. This device also incorporates the modes and routines, so the device can work automatically, modifying various things. Remember that the modes can be synchronized with your watch, so if it detects that you are already sleeping, a sleep mode can be activated. Or if it detects that you are exercising, it can also activate a special mode to set, for example, the sound to be enabled at the highest level or similar things. On the other hand, you can manually create routines for you to set other things that you want to work automatically on your cell phone. For example, when you open the gallery, the automatic rotation is enabled. Or for example, if you are going to open some reading application, you could request that a visual sleep mode is also enabled automatically. And in general, you can automate all kinds of things on your cell phone, so it's a very useful feature. Within the gallery, you can also press and hold on an image to extract it as a sticker that you can use later on the keyboard. Although WhatsApp does not detect it as a sticker and Telegram does, but that is something that developers will have to solve. The truth of the matter is that you can extract images in a very simple way, and you can also extract text. So if you took a picture of a sign, you can easily press and hold, and you can extract that text in digital format. Also, Samsung's photo editor has an object eraser that works well, although it's not yet part of the Galaxy AI suite, but it does seem to use artificial intelligence to fill in the background that was left hollow. Remember that if you choose multiple photos, you can also create a collage with different types of distributions of the images totally free, and you can also generate GIFs once you select multiple images. And finally, remember that Samsung also adds the Samsung Members application, where you have a community forum of several Galaxy users, so you could report any problem or interact with other users who have your same equipment. But also you can have a very extended coupon center, because Samsung has different partnerships in restaurants, clothing stores, pet stores, travel, and many more things. So you can have there a benefit of several discounts for the simple fact of having a Galaxy. Lastly, this device has a vibration motor on the Y-axis. So it's simple, it's not a premium vibration like we would see in more advanced devices, so in that aspect it doesn't stand out. With respect to security, it should be noted that this device has a limitation, because despite having a fingerprint reader, in this case it only supports a maximum of 3 records while others support 5. So here there is less versatility. You cannot register as many trusted people or as many fingers to comfortably unlock your cell phone. It does integrate facial recognition, but it's only in 2 dimensions, so we won't pay much attention to it. It also integrates Google Extended Unlock, so you can register your location or your Bluetooth devices so that in those environments your phone is not completely locked. And remember that it includes the Samsung Pass Password Manager, so you could fill out forms automatically verifying first through your fingerprint with a good level of security, and all synchronized between your Galaxy devices. But Samsung Pass not only allows you to fill in passwords automatically, but you can also access Samsung Pass directly from the keyboard. And in this case, you can insert some nodes that you consider confidential, or also information from your cards and the like, all protected by your fingerprint and accessible directly from the keyboard. I, for example, use it to store passport numbers or similar numbers that I'm probably going to need to quickly fill in, so it's very useful. It also incorporates the secure folder feature, where you can place not only files that will be protected by your fingerprint or by a pattern that can be different from your lock screen, but you can also place applications there that will also be protected by your fingerprint. In addition, this secure folder you can customize to change the icon and even the name, so it can go unnoticed, and it's another good privacy feature. Samsung also adds an option called Secure Wi-Fi. So they offer you a VPN that can be very useful if you are going to connect on public Wi-Fi networks. So it will be very difficult for someone to intercept your information or whatever you're sending in case it's not encrypted. And so it gives you a very good level of security. You get 1 GB for free, but you could also pay for a subscription if you want a lot more capacity. The cell phone also allows you to encrypt the memory card so that in case someone removes it, they can't see the content that's inside. And it also has Samsung Kids mode, so you can lend the phone to your little ones, authorizing only the applications you want. And obviously you can also put some visual rest filter. Obviously this whole environment is customized for children. In fact, you could also set some usage time limits, so it can be a convenient tool also for lending your cell phone. Samsung not only relies on Google Play Protect to maintain a malware-protected experience, but it also has a partnership with McAfee. So it has an antivirus that comes disabled by default, but you can manually enable it in case you want a more secure experience. And in case you happen to lose your phone, it not only relies on Google's implementation, but it also has its own SmartThings Find tool to try to find your phone, which will be able to connect to the Galaxy device's network. So it is important that you activate all the options in this configuration so that you not only have a better chance of finding your phone, but also help other Galaxy users to find their devices in an easier way. Samsung also integrates a maintenance mode so that when you send it for repair, everything is blocked and only the basics remain. So as you'll notice, it's one of the most complete devices in terms of suite of security options, and considering that it is a low and mid-range device, it becomes an attractive point. The battery capacity is 6,000 mAh, so it's one of the most attractive you'll find today. In fact, at the beginning of the video, I mentioned to you that it was a little bit thick and a little bit heavy. But here's the explanation. It has a very large battery, and it really does translate into good battery life and good autonomy. Running the drainer that I always run in the foreground, the device was able to exceed 5 hours. So it really does become remarkable, but even more remarkable is the good management of the applications running in the background. Since doing the background draining test while playing YouTube videos in the foreground, it was able to reach almost 8 hours, a figure that really few devices are able to achieve. So the battery itself is a highlight, a very strong point in its favor, especially talking about autonomy, which also comes well complemented with a simple battery saving mode or an additional option for an extreme saving mode. So as I tell you, the autonomy is a very good point, but globally speaking, with respect to what is battery related, the weak point would be that it doesn't include charger in the box. So you have to buy the charger separately. It supports charging up to 25 watts, but you are not forced to buy the original Samsung charger, but you could also buy power delivery chargers as it supports this standard, so you could save some money in that sense. Using the original Samsung charger in my test, it recovered 21% in 15 minutes, 42% in 30 minutes, and the full charge finished in about an hour and 40 minutes. So it's a device that doesn't have an ultra spectacular charge, but it does have very good autonomy. And through software, you see that it has 3 levels of battery protection. The most basic one allows you, while it's plugged into the charger, if it reaches 100%, it discharges to 95 and then recharges this in order to not keep the battery at 100%, which can affect the life of this battery. The next level of protection would allow you a little bit slower charging through the night, although it must learn your usage pattern first. So if you want to leave it charging overnight, I think this option can help you to keep the battery from deteriorating. And the maximum protection level can be useful when you keep the cell phone plugged in at all times. For example, when you go in your car. So it can lock the charge up to 80% again in order not to deteriorate the battery. So it's a very good battery experience, with the exception that it doesn't come with a charger. This device also supports 5G networks, giving a good speed. It also includes an option for you as the user to select which applications will be able to connect to the internet with your mobile data and which applications will only connect via Wi-Fi. In this case, it does not include support for an SIM. So if you are traveling, you will have to buy a physical SIM. Fortunately, it supports Wi-Fi 6 networks, which is quite remarkable for the price range, giving you good download speeds. It also has Bluetooth 5.3, giving you good stability with your accessories, and it has NFC, so you can make mobile payments or link to other devices simply by reaching behind your back. In this case, a major absence for the price range is that it doesn't have FM radio, and with respect to projecting the screen, it can do it wirelessly through SmartView, so you could even project just an app or project with the screen off, so it's a screen projection with good options. It also includes Android Auto, and with respect to sensors, honestly, we could not complain much if it includes accelerometer, geomagnetic field sensor, orientation sensor, gyroscope, which are sensors that in this range some manufacturers begin to discard. And the proximity sensor in this case seems more like a contact sensor, because when I bring my hand closer it is not enabled, but if I get to completely touch the edge of this device, if it is going to get to have a response. So, it's important that when you call or listen to a WhatsApp audio or similar things, you get the device completely close to your ear so that it really activates. I think that could be improved, but for the price range, maybe we can't get too picky. Samsung's ecosystem, as usual, is very good. Samsung has a good portfolio of devices. For example, the Galaxy Buds, which are their headphones, are going to work well together because you could connect a pair of Galaxy Buds so that 2 friends can share music. Also, the Galaxy Buds can be connected to the cell phone and the tablet at the same time, and they're going to make the smart switch. Speaking of the tablet, for example, from the Galaxy Tab, you could control your cell phone. You could also answer calls since everything is synchronized. And if you're viewing a web page on your cell phone, you can resume it on your Galaxy Tab. From the Galaxy Watch, you could also take pictures, or you could also control music and other things. So it all works very well together. The only detail here is that laptops are not distributed in many countries, including Mexico. So the interaction with the laptop is not that advanced. It does include the connection to Windows pre-installed, so the configuration is much easier. And on the computers, you could also install Quick Share to be able to send and receive images or videos wirelessly. But as I say, it requires this additional step. So from my point of view, Samsung could greatly improve its ecosystem if it would be encouraged to sell Galaxy Buds in other countries. But fortunately, it's not very dependent on Google. For example, in cloud storage, it also has a collaboration with Microsoft. So it's integrated with Gallery in case you want to back up your photos to OneDrive. And Samsung has its own app to control your home devices called SmartThings. So you're not dependent on Google Home, as SmartThings has much more widespread compatibility. You can add more number of devices, and the performance obviously is very good also in conjunction with the watch and other devices. So in ecosystem, Samsung is very close to being perfect, but it still lacks one more step. Let's now go for the performance test. This device incorporates the Exynos 1380 processor. That is the same processor that was incorporated in the Galaxy A54. So honestly, for the price range, I consider it's a good processor, although we'll see the results in a moment. It also incorporates 6 GB of RAM, which is barely what's necessary for good responsiveness within the Samsung system, and it has 128 GB of storage. In this case, it took 3.3 seconds to open on average each of these 16 apps I opened. That's a bit of an extreme test considering it's a lower mid-range device, so as you'll notice, you're constantly going to see some white screens or app restarts. It seems that these 6 GB of RAM are not enough for Samsung to manage to keep a good execution of these applications running in the background. As you'll notice, almost all of these apps are restarting. So ideally, you'd want to have maybe 8 apps running in the background to have a slightly smoother experience when you're switching back and forth between them. Note that in this case, it comes with 4 GB of virtual RAM enabled by default, although you could extend it up to an additional 6, but honestly, it doesn't seem to work optimally. So as I say, you'll ideally want to use few apps at the same time on this device if you want to maintain a smoother experience. With storage, the good news is that in addition to the 128 GB that it has internally, you can put a microSD up to a terabyte on it, so you have plenty of space if you consider the memory card. Next, let's do the test of stitching together 4 clips recorded with this device with a total duration of 1 minute, exporting the video in 4K since the device has the capabilities to record in 4K. Although for the price range, ideally we would do the test in full HD. And that's it, it took 47 seconds, which considering the price and considering that it is a video in 4K, really shows us a very good power. For games, Samsung incorporates the Gaming Hub, where you can run games without installing them. In this case, they are more casual games that would not consume internal storage space, but you can also have here a management of the games you have installed. However, before trying these games, I want you to see that in the Game Booster settings, we will be able to have an interesting option, which is to transfer power directly to the processor without passing through the battery to avoid heating. Although for that, you need a compatible charger, which can be the original Samsung charger or a power delivery charger with 25 watts or more. You can also choose whether you want to prioritize performance or battery saving, and you can configure how you want screenshots and some other settings to behave. In fact, within the lab section, you can enable this option that will give you even higher performance, although it might actually heat up the device more. In this case, notice how there are also some other tools like to activate the priority mode, give you a quick look at the status of the device, and also through this small bar that is hidden, you could lock the navigation buttons, also activate a screenshot, screen recording, or finally open some apps in a floating format, but it doesn't offer as many options as we have seen on other Galaxy devices. In Call of Duty, this device by default gives us the average quality at a very high rate. In fact, we can also go up to a high graphics quality, but if we want to go up to a maximum frames per second rate, the graphics quality drops to the lowest level. In this case, we will give priority to the graphic quality, and notice that in this case, not so many effects are available since it is not a Snapdragon processor, and usually these processors may have a little less support for graphic effects, and the experience with this configuration was honestly good. 40 frames per second on average seems to be very good and also maintains a very good stability. While it doesn't quite maintain perfect stability, the lowest peak was just 37, so there's very little variation and fluctuation in the frames per second, maintaining a very stable experience, and in this case with good quality graphics. So the gaming experience was really good. Consider also that the heating did not get to be so high. In the Legends game, we changed the automatic setting to a medium setting at 60 frames per second, and in this case, it's curious that in the initial stage it tried to go up to 120 frames per second, but after a moment it went down to 60 frames per second and maintained good stability. So that's why the stability graph looks strange, but in general the device does maintain a good experience with good graphics and obviously some small low peaks, but it's natural in the game. In fact, it never dipped below 55, so it looks like the experience is really good. In the SpongeBob game by default, we have the resolution and average quality at 30 frames per second. For the price, all we did was go up to 60 frames per second to see how it did. And in this case, it wasn't able to go all the way up to 60 frames per second. It was around 40, which for the price I think is still acceptable. Its lowest peak was 33 frames per second, so the device still maintains a good experience. Remember that we did the test by recording the screen, and even recording the temperature got up to 41.6 degrees Celsius, so it didn't get to be really serious. The device seems to me to offer a good experience for those who want to play games. It's not a gaming specialist, but it does give you a good feel. And finally, the Henshin Impact by default has very low quality. For the test, we turned it up to low, and we also turned it up to 60 frames per second. And in this case, I think the experience, we can say, goes according to the range. As I tell you, it's not a specialized gaming device, but it still maintains a good experience as long as you have a graphics quality according to its price. Also, it seems to keep its temperature in a good way. In this case, it got up to 43.1 degrees Celsius recording the screen, so I don't think it's going to give you a bad experience. In fact, if you play without recording the screen, obviously the device is going to have a cooler behavior. So the average frames per second was 52, as you can see, very close to 60, giving you a good experience in this game as long as you choose the low graphic quality. As a conclusion, probably in its price range, this is one of the best devices, as the fact that it is a Galaxy gives it good benefits. It also has a good screen and good sound. In the cameras, it does not disappoint. It has a very good battery. It disappoints in that it does not bring charger, but even in performance, we see good things if you do not have so many applications running in the background. For the moment, we have reached the end of this video. If you liked it, you know you can tell us about it, and we'll see you next time.